And if at the end of this, we're still spending a lot of money for a lot of nothing, and the only thing that happened were that their friends got rich this time instead of the other side's friends gets rich, I'm not okay with that. I think we actually have to solve a problem. And I think that we have historically and have a habit of cutting what the other side does, blaming the other side, but also doing it too, which is why we never actually solve any problems, because then the left wins and then they do it again. And then the right wins and they do it again. And in the process of this whole entire escapade and this charade of we're making change and difference, like we the people like get screwed every single time.
I would agree with you, and that's why you're. Unfortunately, I think you talked a little bit about this, but like if you don't stand for either party, you're kind of left in this like desert.
Yeah.
And I think part of the goal, at least for me, is like to make this desert an oasis, if I can use an analogy, right? This shouldn't be like, I think a lot of people are fearful of like, saying what you just did, right? Which is basically saying, I align with this administration in like 80% of what they do, but like I'm not there. I'm not okay with like doing a charade, like enriching our own side. I actually want things to improve for everybody. That message doesn't, that's not how you, that's not good messaging in terms of like building, being aligned with the party and kind of being a good foot soldier, so to speak.
Yeah. I remember when Trump launched his meme coin 2 days before inauguration. And I was like, I don't think that's a good thing. Like the president of the United States should not be making a meme coin. I don't think there's no rationale where that's a good thing for me. And people commented and said, well, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have been insider trading for years. So if they can do it, why can't we do it? I'm like, no one should do it, by the way. It's not how it works. You're not solving a problem. Just because they did it doesn't mean you should do it. Like, no, but that's why we always lose. No, but we won right now.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to do things differently, but yet you do it the same this time around. That's not okay. And the amount of people protecting that and standing up for that and literally fighting with me over that. Well, it's okay. Do you know how much Trump sacrificed? He had to fight these lawsuits and he had to fund them himself. Like, no, he didn't fund them himself. You, the electoral donors, you guys paid for that. By the way, he didn't pay his own legal fees. You guys paid the legal fees. And it's like, oh, but he needs to get back. Okay, then all those hundreds of $1 millions made on the meme coin, is that going back to you because you guys invested in this? No, like it's not how it works. So I don't like the idea of normalizing bad behavior because someone else did it before. If you want real change in this world, in this country, like at some point, what a real leader will do is they will make selfless sacrifice. And I have yet to see any leader step up to the plate and say, I'm going to make less this time around because this is better for the country and for society.
There's a couple of those people and they're getting primaried.
Oh.
Yeah, it is.
That is true. And the one guy that seems to be doing it and leading the charge in it, even if I don't agree with all the stuff that he does, at least he's like honest and genuine. I believe he is, Thomas Massey we're talking about.
Yeah, and it happens on both sides too. Like Democrats, they want to primary the people who are causing the problem in their party. The ones that like actually stand on principle versus like bending at every point, which is,
Just a quick break before this video continues. If you haven't signed up for Soju yet, go check it out, soj.oo. It's a social discussion platform that we've created. That's where the community is hanging out. Definitely worth checking out, soj.oo. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, do it now.
That goes, back to the dissent. Like they don't tolerate dissent in general. Like if you stop and you become a problem for us, we're going to try to get rid of you, even though they're the most principled. Like if we actually care about solving the problem, right? Because you can agree or disagree with the theory for Massey specifically. Like he wants to cut government spending, right? You could argue that's bad. You could say we need all these programs, this and that, right? That's putting that aside. He's actually following through with this versus like talking about cutting the government, but only cutting the parts that you don't like and then funneling the money to fund programs that you do like. And then actually having higher spending. Because I think the bill increases spending, which it doesn't make any sense. Like the people should be rioting. At least the people who voted for Trump, right? They should say, hey, no, this is not what we're all about, right? We're saying we're going to You're saying how bad the deficit is, the debt, national debt. Why is this? Why are we choosing to do this? Oh, because you can get rich short term. I don't know.
I mean, every president they come in, they say, we're going to reduce the federal deficit. We're going to balance the books.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. And then they spend more.
Yeah.
It's not just Trump. Every president does this, by the way.
Right.
It's just a system that is. And what has to happen is one guy needs to come into power and say, no, we're actually going to fix this. And even if it means I don't get to do any of the things that I want to do, even if it means that I don't get to do these programs, even if it means that in the history books, it'll say I did nothing but balance the budget. Like, people want their names remembered, which is why they do all these crazy programs. Because in a history book, they want to say, these are the things that, this is the deal he made. You got to sacrifice that and say that I don't actually want any of it. My only goal is to get us back on track. And if someone actually did that, that would be an amazing thing, wouldn't it?
I think that, if you're talking about people wanting to preserve their name in the history books, probably, yeah. That would be the way to go. And the one way we can probably support that in terms of action from voters is you need to reward that behavior, right? You need to reward guys. Like, for example, if Thomas Massey loses his next election,
which is crazy,
then it'll be, well, I can't do that. Shouldn't do that. But if he's rewarded and he wins, and he wins by bigger margins, then other politicians will say, oh, that's how I stay. Because they don't want to stay in power. They want their job, right? It's like, oh, how do I keep my job? I am a good representative for my constituents. If that gets rewarded versus what gets rewarded right now is kissing the right amount, the right donors, making sure you don't piss those people off, because then they ultimately will support you, or they'll, even worse, spend money against you, right? Because that's part of the thing too. Some people, there are some Congress people that say, oh, I don't take any corporate money now, right? And they say, I'm really clean. But that actually is not enough to keep you from doing exactly what they want you to, or they still do exactly what the donors want, because what the donors will do is say, if you don't do this, we're gonna fund your primary challenge. And that's the way things also, that's how the status quo is maintained as well. It's not just oh, I don't take any money, I'm good. It's oh, well, that money was just going to flow to somebody else who's going to destroy me. So as the voters, that's that's one of the few powers we kind of have left. We still have this voting power to say, okay, at least for because I'm not telling you can't pay attention to everything, but pay attention in your own district to say, hey, this is my guy. I like my guy because he represents me well. So I don't care what other people because they'll drag up all kinds of shit. Everybody who's run against Nancy Pelosi somehow turns up to be a sex offender or a harasser, womanizer, whatever. They'll just make whatever they want up about you if you challenge these people, the wrong people. But on the other side, they can do the same thing to you too. You'll all of a sudden, if they don't like you anymore, for Al Franken. I don't know. You can argue that what he did was wrong, but it's a political move to get rid of him. And all these things, they can find whatever reason they want to get rid of you, if it's become inconvenient.
What about this idea? I've had this idea in elections. We should put salary caps on, meaning you can only spend this much in an election, and you have to do the best with the money that you're given, because it would prove that as a congressperson or as a president or whatever, that you're able to operate within the budget that you're given. So that shows competency, and you can't overspend in order to beat the other side, because that we've tried that in this country and it's not working. So what if we said in a presidential race, $250 million max you can spend?
Yeah. That's in theory a great idea, right? Because
they're all going to raise that no matter what anyway,
yeah.
Whatever cap you put on it.
Because then that basically, yeah, that's to your point. That's, I haven't heard anybody bring up this, but I've heard people hey, we need to limit money. But I think that some other countries do this similar thing where it's either limiting the amount of time you can campaign or the amount of money that's raised and where it's coming from. But yeah, that's a great idea, because then it shows, okay, how do I make this $250 million go the longest way possible? Where should we invest in the advertising? Should we do it here in this district, or should we go over here? Or do we want to do radio? Do we want to do TV? Or do we spend the money hitting the road? Is that the best? It's to put on events. Is that money better spent that way? Because then you can figure out, okay, what's best versus I think not to continue to bash on Kamala, but they burned through $1 billion in 3 months doing absolutely. They built,
nothing.
You know how the Call Her Daddy show that went on, and that story where they spent $100 million or $100,000 to build the set for one day, to use it one time. because she didn't want to fly to the Call Her Daddy studio that already exists.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's a real podcast that it's
yeah.
already done every week. She didn't want to do that. She wanted to make the host, Alex Cooper, come to her wherever she was, and they built an entire set that's used one time and then taken down $100,000. And then they spent $1 million, same thing with Oprah, to do an interview with Oprah. That's not good use of money.
Damn, when they call me to do an interview, I would have interviewed Kamala, by the way. You know what I mean?
You would have been too dangerous. You would have, I think you're...
I would have been total pushover. Be like, oh, that's amazing.
I'm sure you're on the list somewhere.
You're so phenomenal, you know? Like, oh, like, yeah, that's all you had to do to, like, get to the top and sleep? That's amazing, you know? Like, good for you. You know, you look fabulous in that dress. Like, I would have done a total fluff piece for her for $1 million. Why not? I'm just saying that.
Well, that's what they needed though, because they didn't do any real interviews because they said the interviews had to be sort of the questions pre-screened and also edited, right? Because I think Rogan came and disclosed some of these things. They said, "Well, are we going to be able to edit it afterwards?" He said, "No, we put out everything unedited. It's just we record it and it goes out, and that's it."
Man, do you think they? I've thought about this. Do you think they let her be the presidential nominee because they knew she couldn't win? Like, was this whole thing like a part of the plan? And now we're going like super black pill. But is it possible that she was placed in that situation because she was never supposed to win?
I actually did a very short video on that. On this particular theory, it's like, are they meant to lose? Yeah. Because if you look at the Democratic Party, it really functions as like a fundraising machine. It's a business. It doesn't. So like it's this. What's prioritized the most is not necessarily not even winning. Sometimes it's like, how do we generate more money for the Democratic Party? And if you think, looking back on the first Trump administration, it was like a boon in terms of fundraising across the board, right? The resistance, and so if they can use that to raise more money, why not? We'll take an L right now. That's fine. We'll be able to raise money. And it's not like, I mean, if you look at the core of things, the Democratic Party, I would argue, some people would disagree with this, but I think it's probably very similar, 80-90% with the Republican Party, right? I saw a video the other day that made the analogy. It's like the Democrats will put like an 8-meter crater in Gaza and then yell at Republicans because they want to make it 10. It's like, that's pretty much what we're dealing with right now. And so you could definitely, I mean, I was like, this is a little conspiratorial, but yeah, you could argue that they would rather have a Republican president than a Bernie Sanders president. I mean, that's historically been proven to be true now, that they basically sabotaged him twice. Okay? Because they don't want that fundamental change. And that's bigger political evaluation of the Democratic Party. One of the things that they struggle with is that their ideology doesn't match their donor base, because their donor base is more or less the same as Republicans in a lot of ways, but they talk more about like, oh, we need to care for the minorities, we need to care about workers and this and that, but all their donors are like rich people who don't care about those things. Whereas I think more on the more Republican, I think that it's easier to sell the message more. I don't know if you would agree, to say, hey, how we're going to make the country more wealthy is by deregulating, by making sure businesses are thriving, and then you'll get some of that pie too. That is much more congruent versus saying that, your reason you're not doing well is because of all these systemic issues and there's racism everywhere, and we need to stop the racism. We need to make sure workers have their power. But then, we can't pass the $15 minimum wage because the parliamentarian said no. Yeah, it doesn't. It's like, the parliamentarian, a position we never heard of before, all of a sudden has huge, tremendous power that stopped you from pushing your legislation through. No, I don't think so. I think it's because like they didn't really want to get it through, and now they have a scapegoat. I mean, you're seeing it right now. Like, there's no parliament. I mean, you think Trump is going to let the parliamentarian get in the way? Either they just get rid of him completely, or they put somebody in there that's going to agree. It's like, we don't like this parliamentarian, we're going to get rid of this guy. So I mean, to this day, I've never heard of the explanation of who the parliamentarian is. Like, is there one right now? Does that exist today?
I don't know.
But that was literally for the Democrats, that was a major excuse that they use to say, we can't do this. And I don't know why, right? You can agree or disagree with their policy, but you can't really discount that, maybe they didn't really want to get that legislation through.
Yeah, a lot of disingenuity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the incongruence that they got to deal with.
Thanks for watching the clip. If you want to see the full episode, click here. If you want to see more clips, click here.